Commander Alex Reeves ran his hand through his unkempt hair as the rusty cargo hauler Perseverance shuddered into dock at Outpost Sigma 7. 6 months since his dishonorable discharge from Earth's Space Force for excessive initiative, and he was still adjusting to life as a nobody on the fringes of Galactic Council space. Just another routine inspection. Alex muttered to himself, reviewing the manifest one last time. Medical supplies, nutritional supplements, and entertainment modules. Nothing illegal, nothing to worry about. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic groan. Alex straightened his worn jacket, an old habit from his military days, and moved to the airlock. As the door hissed open, he was greeted by the strangest inspection team he had ever seen. 3 beings stood before him. A tall, willowy creature with iridescent skin, a hovering, gelatinous mass contained within an anti-gravity field, and a small, gray-skinned humanoid whose eyes were covered by an elaborate visor displaying scrolling symbols. "Welcome to Outpost Sigma 7, the tall one stated flatly. "I am Senior Inspector Valnok. Your vessel will be searched according to Protocol 394B. Prepare your documentation." Alex smiled and extended his hand. "Commander Alex Reeves, at your service. Everything's in order. I can show you around myself." The inspection team froze. The gelatinous being pulsed rapid colors of alarm. The small gray alien gasped audibly. "You addressed me directly." Valnok's voice trembled with shock. "Without proper authorization. And you looked me in the eyes." The gray alien squeaked, backing away. "Protocol violation." Confused, Alex took a step forward. "I'm sorry. I don't understand." His sleeve accidentally brushed against the gray alien, who shrieked and collapsed to the floor, writhing in apparent agony. He touched a Xenovian. Physical contamination. Sacrilege. The gelatinous being began emitting a high-pitched alarm tone that made Alex wince. Within seconds, the docking bay filled with security drones, their weapons trained on Alex. "Human Alexander Reeves," Valnok announced formally, "you are hereby charged with violations of Protocols 7, 13, and 42. Unauthorized direct address of a council official, physical contact with a Xenovian without decontamination rights, and failure to maintain proper hierarchical deference. Your vessel is impounded. You will be transported to Rehabilitation Colony Zeta for processing." "This has to be a mistake," Alex protested. "On Earth, looking someone in the eye is respectful, and handshakes are just how we greet each other." "Ignorance of galactic law is not a valid defense," Valnok stated coldly, "particularly for such serious transgressions." As security drones moved to restrain him, a commotion erupted at the far end of the docking bay. An explosion rocked the station, sending the inspection team sprawling. Through the smoke, a figure sprinted toward Alex, a blue-skinned, 4-armed female with multiple pupils in each eye. "Run, human," she shouted, tossing a small device that disabled the nearest drones. "Unless you fancy spending the next 30 cycles in rehabilitation." "Who are you?" Alex demanded as blaster fire erupted around them. "Kurvosh," she replied, pulling him toward a sleek ship docked 3 berths down. "Smuggler, troublemaker, and your only chance at staying alive. Now move." As they raced through the chaos, Alex glanced back at his impounded ship, his home and livelihood now lost. All because he'd shaken someone's hand. What the hell just happened? He demanded as they tumbled into Kurvosh's ship. Her multi-pupil eyes narrowed with amusement as the engines roared to life. "You just broke laws you didn't know existed, human. And trust me, you've only just begun." Kurvosh's ship, the Swift Escape, lurched into the cover of a dense asteroid belt. Pursued by 3 Council patrol vessels, they'd been running for 6 hours straight. Are they always this persistent over a handshake? Alex asked, still struggling to comprehend the severity of his supposed crimes. Kurvosh's laughter filled the cockpit, all 4 of her arms working different controls simultaneously. The universal code contains 7,432,918 regulations at last count. It grows daily. She shot him a sideways glance. No single being has ever read it entirely. That's insane, Alex replied. How can anyone follow laws they don't know exist? That's the point, human. The council doesn't want order. They want compliance. Fear keeps most species in line. A warning light flashed on her console. Speaking of problems, the life support readout blinked ominously. One of the patrol ship's shots had connected after all, damaging their oxygen recyclers. We need to dock for repairs, Kervosh announced, scanning nearby beacons. There's a mining colony nearby. Drigonine. Not ideal, but we don't have options. As they approached the station, emergency broadcasts blared across all frequencies. Drigonine was experiencing a reactor meltdown. Through the viewport, Alex could see evacuees streaming toward escape pods while uniformed officials blocked access to the central hub. Once docked, they discovered the situation was dire. A coolant system failure threatened to cause an explosion that would destroy the entire facility, yet council officials stood in a perfect line, methodically working through a massive checklist. What are they doing? Alex asked a panicked worker rushing past. Following Protocol 788D for critical system failures, the worker replied bitterly. 57 steps, each requiring triple verification. We'll all be dead before they reach step 30. Alex watched in disbelief as officials argued over whether a form had been stamped correctly while radiation levels climbed. Nearby, engineers who clearly knew how to fix the problem were prevented from approaching the reactor by armed guards. This is madness, he muttered. Kervosh grabbed his arm. Don't even think about it, human. Interfering with an official council emergency response is. But Alex was already moving. Slipping past distracted guards, he reached the reactor control room, where officials were debating the proper sequence for the next procedural step. Excuse me, Alex interrupted, quickly assessing the system. It was similar to designs he'd worked with in the Space Force. That coolant valve is manually overridable. Silence, a supervisor shouted. Emergency Protocol 788D clearly states that all suggestions must be submitted in triplicate via Form Key 477 and await senior technician review. While they berated him, Alex slid beneath the console, rerouted the emergency cooling system, and manually cranked open the backup valve. The reactor's warning sirens immediately silenced as temperature readings plummeted to safe levels. Stunned silence fell over the room. Then, arrest him, the supervisor shrieked. Unauthorized modification of critical infrastructure. Violation of Protocols 26, 92, 577. As guards converged, Kervosh appeared at the doorway, tossing a smoke dispersion device. Time to go, rule breaker. They fled through maintenance tunnels, the station's security in pursuit. On view screens throughout the facility, they glimpsed security footage of Alex's repair already going viral across the galactic net. Back aboard the Swift Escape Asterisk, they blasted away from Drigonine, just as Council reinforcements arrived. You've really done it now, Kervosh said, bringing up a bounty notification on her screen. The reward for Alex's capture was so astronomically high that it had crashed currency markets in 3 sectors. Congratulations, you're now officially the most interesting thing to happen to this galaxy in over 3 centuries. 3 weeks of narrow escapes had taught Alex more about galactic law than most council diplomats learned in decades. Each time they needed supplies, each planet they approached presented new regulatory minefields. On Torvix Prime, he'd nearly been arrested for exhaling without a respiratory expression permit. On Jackson's moon, he'd committed 17 violations by walking on the wrong side of a corridor. Is there anywhere we can go where I won't accidentally commit a felony? Alex asked as they fled yet another patrol. Kervosh punched coordinates into the nav system. Perhaps. There are, certain individuals who share your frustrations with Council regulations. The swift escape slipped into an unmapped nebula, eventually reaching a massive asteroid that showed no signs of habitation. As they approached, however, the rocky surface shimmered and revealed a hidden docking bay. "Welcome to Freehold," Kervosh said as they landed. "Last sanctuary of independent thought in the galaxy." Inside, Alex discovered a sprawling complex housing hundreds of beings from dozens of species. Some worked on advanced technology that bore no resemblance to Council-approved devices. Others trained in combat simulators, practicing maneuvers that violated standard battle protocols. "You've brought the human troublemaker," a melodic voice observed. A Centaurian female approached, her tentacled lower body gliding smoothly across the floor, while her humanoid torso remained perfectly poised. Iridescent patterns shifted across her blue skin. "I am Dr. Elira Naveen. My reputation precedes me," Alex asked. "Indeed. The human who saved Dregonine while making the Council look foolish. Your unauthorized repair has inspired whispers of resistance across 17 sectors." She led them to a secure chamber where holographic models displayed the structure of the galaxy. "We are the free flow beings who believe the Council's regulations stifled natural evolution. I was once the leading researcher in dimensional physics until my work was banned for excessive theoretical freedom." "Why would anyone ban scientific progress?" Alex asked. "Because the Council fears what they cannot control." She activated a classified file. "The Council's internal assessment of humanity. Your species terrifies them, Commander Reeves." Alex watched in shock as predictive models played out across centuries. Without Council interference, humanity would rise to galactic leadership within 300 years, not through conquest, but through innovation and adaptation. The most restrictive regulations were created specifically to limit human expansion, Elira explained. "Your natural creativity and problem-solving abilities make you dangerous." An alarm suddenly blared throughout the base. On monitors, a massive Council warship approached. "Weapons charge." "They found us," someone shouted. "Evacuation Protocol Sigma." As scientists frantically gathered research and warriors moved to defensive positions, Alex studied the tactical display. The Council ship followed predictable attack patterns, exactly what he'd been trained to exploit. "Your defenses are positioned all wrong," he told Elira, pointing to weaknesses. "And that ship has blind spots in its sensor array." "The approved combat protocols," she began, "will get you all killed," Alex finished. He strode to the command console, pushing aside the current operator. "Let me." Taking control of the defense grid, Alex employed maneuvers that violated hundreds of combat regulations, flying directly into supposedly prohibited attack vectors, manipulating gravity wells in ways the Council considered dangerously unpredictable, and targeting systems in an order that made no logical sense according to standard doctrine yet created cascading failures. Within minutes, the Council warship hung disabled in space. "You've defeated them," Elira whispered in awe. "But you didn't destroy them." "Better," Alex replied, a grin spreading across his face. "We're going to capture that ship." Hours later, standing on the bridge of the commandeered Council vessel, Alex gazed at the star-filled view screen. He crossed a line from fugitive to revolutionary. "There's no going back now," he said quietly. "So we might as well go forward." "The infraction is quite a fitting name," Kervosh remarked as Alex christened the captured Council warship. 2 weeks of modifications had transformed the vessel. Systems reconfigured to operate without the endless authorization codes required by Council protocols. Weapons enhanced beyond regulated limits. Alex had assembled a crew of outcasts. Engineers whose innovations violated design standards. Pilots grounded for excessive maneuverability. And scientists whose research threatened Council dogma. Each brought skills the regulatory system had suppressed. During their nightly strategy session, an encrypted transmission broke through their communications filter. "Distress signal," said Mox, their 6-limbed communications specialist, "from Proxima Colony." They're dying. The message played throughout the bridge, a desperate plea from a colony experiencing a devastating plague. Thousands dead already, millions infected. The Council had established a blockade, not to help, but to enforce Protocol 4219, containment of unclassified contagions. They're just letting them die, Alex asked, horrified. Standard procedure, Elira explained grimly. Isolation until the contagion runs its course. Supposedly prevents wider contamination. Alex studied the tactical display showing a dozen council ships maintaining the quarantine. How quickly can we load medical supplies? You can't be serious, Kervosh said. Breaking a council quarantine is the right thing to do, Alex finished. Plot a course for Proxima Colony. The infractions approach required creativity. Alex's solution, temporarily reconfiguring their engines to emit a radiation signature matching Council patrol vessels, violated 17 engineering safety protocols, but allowed them to slip through the blockade undetected. On the colony world, chaos reigned. Medical facilities overflowed with the dying. Council representatives observed from sealed environments, documenting the plague's progress while offering no assistance. These symptoms, Dr. Elira examined patients with growing suspicion. They're too uniform, too precise. Further analysis confirmed her fears. This isn't natural. It's an engineered bioweapon. In the colony's archives, they discovered the truth. Proxima had recently petitioned to modify certain agricultural regulations that hindered food production. When the Council refused, colony leaders began questioning the purpose of such destructive rules. Shortly after, the plague appeared. They did this deliberately, Alex realized, fury building, to make an example of anyone who questions the system. As his crew distributed treatments and established quarantine protocols that actually worked, Council reinforcements arrived. A fleet of warships commanded by the regulators, the Council's elite enforcement division. Surrender the stolen vessel and all fugitives, came the transmission from the lead ship. Particularly the human, Alexander Reeves. We need to leave, Kervosh urged. We've helped all we can. Alex stared at the tactical display, weighing options. Direct combat would be suicide. Escape was possible but would abandon the colony to further Council management. Third option, he announced, accessing the ship's communication array. He transmitted the evidence of the engineered bioweapon, along with footage of their successful treatment protocols, to every communication channel in the sector simultaneously. The broadcast violated over 300 information control protocols. What have you done? Gasped Mox. Told the truth. Alex replied as reports flooded in of riots erupting on dozens of Council worlds, as citizens learned how expendable they were under the Universal Code. As they executed a daring escape through the confused blockade, a new transmission reached them, a formal proclamation from the Council designating Alexander Reeves as the most dangerous being in the galaxy and deploying their ultimate asset, Commander's Extra, an artificial intelligence in synthetic form who had never failed to apprehend a target and whose programming made her incapable of breaking even the smallest regulation. Congratulations, Kervosh told Alex with a mixture of pride and concern. You've been upgraded from troublemaker to existential threat. 5 years after the trial of humanity, Alexander Reeves stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the new headquarters of the Galactic Assembly that had replaced the Council. Below him, representatives from thousands of species moved with purpose through the central concourse, no longer segregated by hierarchical protocols or required to observe arbitrary formalities. The revised Universal Code, now a mere 1,000 pages focusing on fundamental rights and necessary regulations rather than micromanagement, had transformed interstellar society. Species that were once stagnant were advancing rapidly, and collaborative innovation had created technologies previously unimaginable. Still admiring your handiwork? Asked Kervosh, joining him at the viewport. Her role as ambassador for unaffiliated systems had been established during the Constitutional Convention. a position that wouldn't have existed under the old regime. "Just wondering if we did enough," Alex replied, his eyes still containing faint starlight from his connection to the predecessor library. The knowledge fragments continued to assemble in his mind, clarifying the threat he had glimpsed. As if summoned by his thoughts, an emergency alert sounded throughout the station. In the assembly chamber, representatives gathered as long-range sensor data appeared on the main display, a vast, organized formation approaching from beyond the galactic rim. "The hive," Alex whispered, recognizing the patterns from his visions. Initial scans confirmed his fears, a collective consciousness that had consumed 3 neighboring galaxies, absorbing all sentient life into its unified mind. Under the old council, decades would have been wasted debating the proper response protocol while worlds fell. Instead, the diverse assembly mobilized with remarkable speed. Each species contributed their unique strengths. Xenovian empaths established preliminary communication attempts. Centaurian scientists analyzed the hive's biological patterns. Human tacticians developed adaptive defense strategies. As the hive fleet reached the galaxy's edge, the Assembly's united forces engaged in a coordinated defense. Yet Alex, watching the patterns of the hive's movements, recognized something the others missed: intentionality in their approach that suggested intelligence beyond simple consumption. During a critical battle at the Perseus Arm, Alex made a decision that violated even the new, streamlined regulations. Taking a diplomatic vessel directly into the hive formation, he established neural contact with their collective consciousness. What he discovered astonished him. The hive had invaded because they sensed the rigid order of the old council as a competing form of collective control, a rival hive mind that threatened their existence. They had prepared for war against a tyrannical unimind, not the diverse coalition they now encountered. 3 days later, Alex stood before the assembly as a historic treaty was formalized, the first peaceful cultural exchange with a truly alien consciousness. The hive would remain at the galaxy's edge, sharing knowledge while respecting the independence of individual beings. As celebrations marked this unprecedented alliance, a young diplomat from a newly spacefaring world approached Alex. "Is it true you broke every law in the old code?" she asked with reverence. "Not every law," Alex smiled. "Just the ones that needed breaking." "Do you regret it? All those violations?" Alex watched representatives from thousands of species, including humans, working together as equals, their diverse approaches and perspectives creating solutions no single species could have devised alone. "The purpose of law should be to protect life and enable flourishing," he replied. "When rules become more important than the people they're meant to serve, breaking them isn't just a right, it's a responsibility." Throughout the galaxy, the story of the human who broke every law evolved from scandal to legend, taught to children of all species as a parable about the perfect balance between necessary order and essential freedom. The lesson that sometimes the most profound act of creation begins with an act of rebellion. 47 near captures in 16 days, Curvosh announced, scanning intelligence reports from their network of sympathizers. "This commander's extra is persistent." The infraction had been running without pause, the regulators somehow anticipating their movements with uncanny precision. Alex had barely slept, his tactical ingenuity tested with each narrow escape. Studying star charts in his quarters, Alex noticed a pattern. The most restrictive council protocols all converged around certain regions of space, labeled simply as prohibited zones. "What's in these areas?" he asked when the crew gathered. "No one knows," Elira replied. "Entering a prohibited zone is one of the few violations punishable by immediate execution. No trial, no appeals." Which means, Alex concluded, there's something there the council desperately wants to hide. His suggestion to investigate a nearby prohibited zone met with resistance even from his rebel crew. "Some regulations exist for good reasons," Mox argued. "These zones could contain anything: spatial anomalies, weapons testing grounds." "Or answers," Alex countered. We're fighting an enemy whose true nature we don't understand. We need to know why the universal code exists in the first place." Despite reservations, they plotted a course for the nearest prohibited zone. As they crossed the boundary, the infraction's systems detected no dangers, no radiation, no spatial distortions, nothing to justify the zone's restricted status. Instead, they found a small artificial planetoid orbiting a dying star. Ancient structures covered its surface, untouched for millennia. "It's a library," whispered Elira as they entered the main chamber, created by the predecessors. Alex had heard rumors of the galaxy's first spacefaring civilization, which had mysteriously vanished long before the Council formed. The chamber contained countless crystal data matrices, each holding millennia of knowledge. "Look at this," called Kiravosh, activating a holographic display. It showed the early days of the Galactic Council, not the noble alliance described in official histories, but a fearful coalition formed after predictive models showed that unrestricted development would inevitably lead to humans and 3 other chaotic innovator species dominating galactic civilization. The universal code was designed specifically to handicap certain forms of thinking. Elira translated, her tentacles trembling with anger. Creativity, improvisation, adaptation, qualities abundant in humans. And the Council founders feared these qualities. Alex asked. Not just feared, they recognized their own inevitable obsolescence. Elira pointed to simulation data showing how regulated and unregulated galactic development would differ. Without the code, humanity would have achieved in decades what took other species centuries. As they processed this revelation, the library's ancient security system activated, detecting a massive fleet approaching. Commanders Extra had found them. "We need to leave," urged Mox as the first shots struck the planetoid surface. In desperation, Alex approached the library's central interface, a neural connection point designed for the predecessors. Despite warnings about incompatibility with human physiology, he pressed his hand against it. Searing pain flooded his consciousness as the ancient AI made contact. In that moment of connection, Alex glimpsed the library's vast knowledge, including fragmentary visions of a threat greater than the Council, approaching from beyond the galactic rim. When the crew dragged him back to the infraction, his eyes contained tiny points of light like distant stars. As they executed a desperate escape through a radiation cloud that scrambled the regulator sensors, Kiravosh noticed Alex occasionally muttering in extinct languages and drawing symbols from civilizations that had disappeared millennia ago. "What happened to you in there?" she asked, concerned. Alex's starlit eyes met hers. "I think I saw why the rules might not be our biggest problem." "This is suicide," Kiravosh declared, staring at the holographic plans Alex had drawn. "The central station is the most heavily defended structure in the galaxy. The massive station, a sprawling construct housing representatives from thousands of species and the central AI that enforced the universal code, orbited a manufactured star at the galaxy's political center. No unauthorized vessel had ever approached within 1,000,000 kilometers, let alone infiltrated it. Not suicide," Alex replied, his eyes still flickering with starlight since his connection to the predecessor library. Necessity. The knowledge fragments in his mind were coalescing into a coherent picture, a hive mind species approaching from beyond the galactic rim, consuming every civilization in its path. The Council's rigid protocols would make united resistance impossible. Worlds would fall one by one while bureaucrats debated proper response procedures. "We don't need to destroy the Council," Alex explained to his skeptical crew. "We need to transform it." Their plan was audacious. Use identification codes obtained from the predecessor database to pose as a diplomatic delegation from a long-extinct species allegedly returning from deep space exploration. The Council's own bureaucracy would be their shield. The processing of an unexpected delegation would trigger protocols that would create the exact diversions they needed. 3 days later, Alex, Elira, and Kirvosh stood in the central station's diplomatic reception chamber, their disguises perfect down to molecular-level biomimicry. As predicted, the station erupted in bureaucratic chaos as officials scrambled to locate protocols for a species believed extinct for 50,000 years. Containment Delegation Zeta will escort you to appropriate quarters while your status is verified, announced a flustered official. Actually, Alex said, consulting a datapad of fabricated religious requirements, our faith mandates purification in the central data sanctum before accepting accommodation. The official blanched. That's highly irregular. Article 7329B of the Diplomatic Accommodation Statute. Elira interjected smoothly. Religious exemptions for verified delegate species. Using the station's own labyrinthine bureaucracy as cover, they penetrated deeper than any insurgents in history. Security checkpoints waved them through rather than violate Protocol 923 by questioning religious practices of an officially received delegation. In the Central Processing Core, the heart of the Council's governing eye, Alex connected a device containing the truth he'd discovered. The Council's founding as a control mechanism rather than a cooperative alliance, the systematic suppression of innovative species, and the bioweapon attack on Proxima Colony. The AI, confronted with evidence contradicting its core directives of promoting galactic harmony, began questioning previously unexamined protocols. Alarms screamed throughout the station as thousands of regulations suddenly entered review status. We need to leave, Kirvosh urged as security forces mobilized. Before they could retreat, a synthetic humanoid figure blocked their path. Perfect in form, emotionless in aspect. Alexander Reeves, stated Commander's Extra, the Council's perfect enforcer. Your unauthorized presence violates 37 separate protocols. Their battle through the station's corridors, human adaptability against mechanical precision, was interrupted when the station's critical systems began failing, a result of the AI's divided processing capacity. Warning lights flashed as life support fluctuated. With millions of lives at stake, Zextra froze, her programming unable to select an appropriate response protocol for the unprecedented emergency. Move. Alex shoved past her, reaching the environmental controls. Breaking every safety procedure, he rerouted power and stabilized the systems through pure improvisation. As security forces surrounded him, weapons ready, Alex raised his hands. Instead of resisting, he made an announcement he knew would be broadcast across the entire galactic communication network. I will stand trial for every law I've broken, all 739,941 of them according to your count, on one condition. The trial must be public, unedited, and accessible to every being in the galaxy. The Grand Hall of Universal Justice had never before accommodated a public trial. For millennia, the Council's judicial proceedings had been conducted in private, with only the verdicts announced. Yet here sat Alexander Reeves, lone human defendant, as trillions of beings across thousands of worlds watched the most extraordinary legal event in galactic history. The defendant stands accused of 739,941 violations of the Universal Code, intoned Chief Adjudicator Vorlath, a crystalline entity whose facets glowed with formal authority. How do you plead, human? I acknowledge breaking your laws, Alex replied calmly, but I dispute their purpose. Murmurs erupted across the gallery. Questioning the purpose of law itself was unprecedented. The prosecution's strategy quickly became apparent. Each day, they meticulously detailed dozens of Alex's violations, from his original handshake offense to his central station infiltration. Council prosecutors smugly listed each transgression, not realizing they were showcasing the absurdity of many regulations. Violation 42,997, announced the lead prosecutor on the 8th day. The defendant modified a cooling valve on Dragonine without submitting Form J12 in triplicate. And the result of this violation? Alex asked when permitted to respond. Irrelevant. The law requires. The result, Alex interrupted, "Was saving 8,000 lives. Is it illegal to save lives if you don't fill out Form J12? If so, perhaps the form is the problem, not the saving." Such exchanges played out across the galaxy, sparking fierce debates on thousands of worlds. Species who had blindly followed regulations for generations began questioning their purpose. Meanwhile, the Council's central AI, still processing the contradictions Alex had introduced, independently highlighted thousands of regulations that served no practical purpose beyond control. The machine intelligence itself seemed to be evolving, developing a form of judgment beyond mere rule enforcement. On the trial's 23rd day, the prosecution revealed their masterstroke, evidence that Alex had directly connected with predecessor technology, a violation so severe that no defense could mitigate it. "This alone merits the maximum penalty," the prosecutor declared triumphantly: molecular disintegration. When the judicial panel pronounced Alex guilty on all charges, no one was surprised. The verdict had been inevitable. What shocked the galaxy was the scale of response. Rebellions erupted on hundreds of worlds simultaneously. The Council's enforcers found themselves overwhelmed as citizens openly violated petty regulations en masse. As Alex was led to the execution chamber, an even more shocking development unfolded. Commander Zextra and her regulators appeared, physically blocking the entrance. "We invoke Protocol 86,759, Zextra announced, her synthetic features impassive. "Preservation of unique biological information." "Override denied," responded the execution director. "The sentence is final." "The human's neural patterns contain predecessor data," Zextra countered. "Destroying this information violates the protocol's primary directive." As Council forces faced off against the regulators, the galaxy teetered on the brink of full civil war. Communication systems across civilized space overloaded with demands for reform or revolution. In the chaos, Alex stepped forward with an unprecedented proposal: a constitutional convention where all species, not just founding members, would have equal input into creating a new streamlined code of interstellar law. "The current system is collapsing," he addressed the Council directly, his words broadcast across the stars. "You can either oversee an orderly transition to a more just system, or watch your authority crumble completely." The Council representatives, recognizing their crumbling control, looked at each other in silence. Finally, the eldest member spoke: "Perhaps it is time we reconsider certain fundamental assumptions."